Okay, thanks everyone for joining this session by Maintenance Assistant on basic scheduled maintenance. My name is Jeffrey Dutchke. I'm an employee here. I've been here for almost a year now. Um, I've been working in the customer success team, working on some blogging stuff and also some working with bug reports and tech support and stuff like that. So that's my brief background here at Maintenance Assistant. Today we're going to talk about scheduled maintenance, which is an extension of the work orders which perhaps you worked on Tuesday if you attended that session. Scheduled maintenance allows you to create uh, scheduled maintenance allows you to create work orders quickly. I'm going to try and increase my volume just briefly if I can. Okay, currently my microphone is as high as it can go. If it becomes a problem, please let me know again. So in this session, I'll go through scheduled maintenance, how we can create them, and I'll also show you how the triggers can be set to make work orders happen automatically in your system. So we'll begin. The scheduled maintenance creates work orders in the future. So in this case, it's probably better called program maintenance rather than scheduled maintenance because schedule implies some sort of time base to it, whereas it's a lot broader than that. We can do time-based maintenance, as we can see here with the time trigger, but we can also do meter reading-based maintenance and event-based maintenance. So in that case, it's not scheduled on a time calendar, but it's planned for in the future. And so in that case, it's programmed, it's planned maintenance, it's stuff we have thought about now, ready to enact in the future to save us some time when an emergency happens or when a piece of equipment reaches a certain level of usage that needs to be then trigger a maintenance work order. So that's what we mean by scheduled maintenance. It's important to remember that scheduled maintenance is not a work order. Scheduled maintenance is something that precedes a work order, and once a trigger condition is exceeded, then it creates a work order. And one scheduled maintenance can produce many work orders, and they then become, those work orders are as a result of the scheduled maintenance, but they are not. The scheduled maintenance is not a work order by itself. So a scheduled maintenance creates a work order when the trigger condition is activated. So this could be from either a time-based maintenance, an annual or a yearly or a monthly-based maintenance, or it could be the trigger could be a usage-based maintenance. So your car has a odometer on it, and you might want to do maintenance based on the odometer of the car, or it could be due to an event, and I'm going to go through each of those three things when we go through scheduled maintenance today. The other thing about scheduled maintenance is you can use it to generate a work order manually, and you just use the scheduled maintenance as a template to generate a work order. So if you're an administrator, you might be involved in thinking about the work orders which may happen in the future, and so you create them in your downtime so that when life becomes a little bit hectic, you can just go to your templates and fire off the work orders that need to be sent when that occurs. If you have any questions, please use the chat functionality in the GoToMeeting control panel. I can respond to them from there. Then once you've created a work order from a scheduled maintenance, then that's when the technician goes away and does their job, which is to complete the work order and report back the things that they have done in order for the system to maintain a complete record of the work orders and the maintenance that you've been doing on your site. So I'd like to go through a couple of examples of scheduled maintenance and where you might use scheduled maintenance. I'm trying to use some fairly generic examples rather than some industrial ones, so perhaps hopefully you can all understand where they're coming from. So first of all, I'll go through one for a car or several for a car, and then I'll go through one for a guest apartment. So you can imagine a hotel, they might use a CMMS program, and we'll see what they are too. So with my car, for example, we may have to do calendar maintenance. And so we may, in this case, have in Toronto, it's been snowing recently again, we may need to install winter tires before the snow season begins. So in the Northern Hemisphere, that's in December. And we then, later on in the year, after the snow has disappeared, we may need to install regular tires. So in both of those cases, they are annual calendar-based maintenances. And so we would perform that maintenance once every year, and once we would create a scheduled maintenance for install winter tires, and then on December 1st, as the calendar ticks over, that would create a work order, which would be sent to my technician, which says go and install the winter tires on the car. For the car, there's also a meter reading maintenance that we might want to do, and that might happen every 10,000 kilometers or 8,000 miles, 5,000 miles, depending on the service recommendations in the book. And so you would fill in the meter reading of the car every time you drove it, for instance, and as that number exceeded 10,000, it would create a scheduled maintenance, and then a bit later on, when it exceeded 20,000, it would create another work order, and then when it exceeded 30,000, it would create another work order, and that would continue on until you sold the car. In the last case, you might be able to predict that some emergency things that could happen with a car, and one of them could be a broken windscreen. And in that case, you would create a scheduled maintenance which would be triggered by an event, which may be a broken windscreen. And so that would save you the hassle of writing out a completely new work order. You would just go to the event and say, this car has a broken windscreen, and that would set off 1 or 2 or 3 work orders which would need to be acted upon to fix this broken windscreen. So there's 3 types of scheduled maintenance for a car, one based on the calendar, one based on the meter reading of the odometer, and one based on an event. So moving on now, we can think about a guest apartment. I've just got a question coming through. The question is concerning the meter reading. I use this, but it does not generate a work order. No, this will work, and I'll show you an example of this working. And this does not need to be manually done. It's based on the meter reading that you put into the system. Thanks for your question. If anyone else has any questions, please use the chat functionality again. Now looking at the guest apartment, a calendar-based maintenance that might happen in a hotel is a daily general clean. So every day a work order would be created from a scheduled maintenance which says go and do a general clean of each of the hotel rooms. And so that work order would be created every day, and then every day the cleaner would tick off that they've done it. And then over the course of the year, you'd be able to go and see how many work orders were done, and you'd be able to look at the times that were put in each of those work orders, and think about whether you need to employ a new cleaner or whether you have one too many cleaners and you can probably afford to let one go. We could also perhaps think about a meter reading, but in this case, I can't think of any equipment inside a guest apartment that would have a meter reading. Perhaps a television might have a meter reading in it that says how many hours it's been watched, and if it's a plasma type screen, you may need to replace it after it's been used for 5,000 hours or something like that. In the case of an event maintenance, you may have a new tenant moving in, so perhaps it's a monthly rental kind of scenario for the guest apartment. And in that environment, you may say, well, a new tenant is moving in, I'm going to go and do a full clean, I'm going to go and just do something more than their standard daily clean. Diane, I don't quite understand your question regarding water towers have meter readings. Yes, I'm sure they do, and if they do, then we can create a scheduled maintenance based on the meter reading of a water tower. That may be how many litres have flow through the pipe. It could be the number of litres which are inside the water tower at the time. We'll go through the presentation, and then questions like that, which are more specific to some of the topics, we can cover off at the end. So, returning to the scheduled maintenance, how do you create one? Well, there's two ways. One of them is you can create from a blank scheduled maintenance. So just like in the work order, you can click on new, and I'll go through that. And that will take you to a new work scheduled maintenance screen, and you can go through the process from there. And the alternative is to create one from a pre-existing work order. So if you've already created a work order and you want to use that as a template for a scheduled maintenance that you want to use again and again, then you can do that too, and I'll show you how to do that. The important thing is down here though, that once you have created a scheduled maintenance with all the information in it, you need to set a trigger for that scheduled maintenance, and so those triggers are time-based or meter-based or event-based. And then you need to remember to make it active, and I'll iterate that several times over the course of today's presentation. So I'm going to go through 3 scheduled maintenance examples today. The first one is going to be a calendar-based trigger. I'm going to do a calendar-based weekly clean in the kitchen in my house. The second one will be a 10,000 kilometre service on a car. And the third one will be snow clearing on a driveway at my house. So hopefully these are simple enough examples that you can understand the motivation for me to do it. The kitchen, because it's good to have a clean kitchen. The car, because you need to have a well-serviced car to make sure it's safe. And the snow clearing, because the councils in Toronto demand that we as residents clean our own driveways and our own footpaths in front of our house. So I'll just go to my CMMS on Firefox over here. And this is a relatively new one. I'm logged in as a manager, so you can see that I have all of the permissions except for the settings permission. But that's okay, that we don't need that for this case. To create a scheduled maintenance, we go to the maintenance tab, and we can see in this case I have no active work orders in my system at the moment. That's okay, because I'm going to create some from my scheduled maintenances. And if we go to the scheduled maintenance tab, we can see we have no scheduled maintenances here either. So we need to create a new one, and the first one we're going to create is the weekly kitchen clean. So to create a new scheduled maintenance, we're in the scheduled maintenance tab, and we click on new up here. And we can see that we get presented with this blank scheduled maintenance form. It looks a lot like the work order form that you would have been seen on Tuesday. It has all of the same things with a couple of minor differences. And remember that the scheduled maintenance is used as a template to create the work order when the trigger condition is exceeded. So that is what it needs to look the same, because it will present that information in the work order when this trigger has been exceeded. So the first thing we can do is select an asset for this scheduled maintenance. So in this case, it is my kitchen, because we want it to be a weekly clean for the kitchen. We can stipulate where the work order starts as, so we can start it as open, we could start it as assigned, we could start it as a draft if we wanted to have an input into it ourselves as administrators before it went to one of our technicians. So we can make that selection here using the drop-down menu. We can also choose a maintenance type, just like in work order. So in this case, it's a cleaning maintenance type, because it's the kitchen cleaning. We can also set a project, but we don't have to, and we can also set a priority. So in this case, cleaning is a fairly high priority type item. The next thing we can do with a scheduled maintenance that perhaps we can't do with a work order is give a suggested completion time after the scheduled maintenance has been created. So in this case, once the scheduled maintenance, once the work order has been created from the scheduled maintenance, we want it to be completed within a certain number of days. So in the case of the kitchen cleaning, I'm going to set it up on Saturday morning, so I want it to be done by Sunday night before the week begins. So I'm going to give myself 2 days to make sure that this scheduled maintenance gets this maintenance gets done. Otherwise, it becomes overdue. So like the rest of the application, we click Save Off in Maintenance Assistant because it makes sure we don't lose any work. Then, like a work order, we can fill in as much information as we can to make the life of the technician easier. So in this case, it is perform the weekly clean of the kitchen, which is fairly simple. We can give some work instructions in here, or we can use the labor task tab. It's up to us. So let's use the labor task tab. The first step will be to clean the cupboards, and I'm going to assign that to one of the technicians group. And the reason why we probably should use groups in scheduled maintenances is because if we were to assign it to an individual, so if I was to assign this to say this individual, Jeff, if Jeff was to leave the organization, then in the future, we would need to come back to this scheduled maintenance and change the task assigned to the new employee who comes in and replaces Jeff. Whereas if we assign it to the technicians group, then we can just put the new person into the technicians group, and they will be notified of all of the scheduled maintenances that the original person was the group that they were part of as well. So it's best to use groups if you can in scheduled maintenances, for that reason. So there's the first task, and I'll just put one more in just to show you that I can do that. I'll add in another task, which is clean the floor, and we'll give that a time estimate of 1 hour, and we'll also assign this to the technicians group. So there you can see we've got 2 tasks, and just like in the work order form, this now prevents us from using the general tab. And I believe I've got a question coming through. The question is how if your cleaner is not part of a user group, say it's from XYZ cleaning company. Well, the answer to that is you create an inactive user. Bernie, I replied to your tech support ticket this morning. You create an inactive user called XYZ cleaning group, and then you make them part of the technicians group or the cleaning group or however they are, or whatever group you want to assign it to. And so, returning now to the scheduled maintenance, we can add in all of the things that we could add into the work order. We could add in a list of parts, and that would get attached to the work orders which are generated from this scheduled maintenance. In this case, this is the notifications tab. So the technicians are automatically notified because they are the people that are assigned to this work order. If we wanted to include the CEO of the company into this particular scheduled maintenance, we could do that as well. We could just add a new user from in here. So in this case, we might want to let the managers group know that this work order has been created, and we can do that here too. And they'll also get an email to say this technician that this work order has been created from this scheduled maintenance. We can add in notes in here to inform us as administrators why we've created this scheduled maintenance and what its purpose is. So this case is it's a general kitchen clean. For more complex equipment, we might want to say, well, refer to the manual for the particular CNC machine that we're dealing with to help us remember why we created this scheduled maintenance in the first place. If we want, we can add files in just like we can with a work order, and they can be referred to later by a technician who's doing the job, just to help them out. And we can see here we also have a log, and the log allows us to see which work orders have been created from this scheduled maintenance, so we can come back in 10 years time and see how many times the scheduled maintenance has created a work order and which person completed it out, and we can find that information out. So that's created a template for a work order based on a scheduled maintenance, and we'll press save for that one. And then the next thing, remember I mentioned in the instructions was we have to set a trigger that creates the work order, and then we have to make it active. So Tina's just asked, do the notes become part of the work order when they're created from the scheduled maintenance? No, they don't. They're there for us as administrators, as far as I'm aware. So now we are back in the scheduled maintenance, and we wish to put a schedule on this scheduled maintenance. So in this case, it's a weekly kitchen clean, and we want to make it happen once every Saturday from now until the end of the world. So to do that, we add a trigger to this scheduling tab, and to do that, we click on the new trigger down here. And in this case, we want to create a work order by the time schedule. So in this case, it's a time schedule, and we want it weekly. As you can see, there are many options here: hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. So hourly, we could make it every 1 hour, every 3 hours, or every 7 hours, and that might be something we do every 8 hours for a shift kind of maintenance, once every shift. Daily, we've seen the hotel example where we might want to do a clean every day of every room. Monthly, that could be every couple of months. We might want to go and look at do an inspection of a part. Or yearly, that's the example of the car tires, where just before winter we want to create a scheduled maintenance to go and, or want to create a work order based on the scheduled maintenance to change the tires over to the winter tires just before the snow season. In this case, though, it's weekly. We want it every 1 week, and we want it to trigger on Saturday. So that's all we have to do to make it every Saturday, and we can set the start date. In this case, it won't create one on the start date because today is not a Saturday, but we can leave that checked, and we'll see some evidence for when the next scheduled maintenance will happen in the text box below, and we want to either set no end date or set an end date sometime in the future. So if it's just something that's going to happen for the next few weeks before it stops, then we can set an end date. If we want it to happen every day from now until the end, we set no end date. Once again, I'll draw you to the attention to the show video help, which in the application we have lots of these buttons, which will give you an additional understanding of the screen you're in at the moment. So we click OK there, and we can see now that we have a trigger every Saturday, and that's what we have to do to start the trigger. Remember that we also have to make it active. So to make it active, we click on the paused here and we change it to active, and we click save. And if we go back to the scheduling tab, we can see now that it gives us an indication of when the next scheduled maintenance will happen and when they will be sent off. I'll just look at the question that's come through. The question is, how can you set a biannually every 6 months? To create one that's every 6 months, we would go in here and we would go to monthly, and we would go day 13 or the first day of the month every 6 months. And so we can create that from there, and we can set a start date. I hope that answers your question, Michael. In this case, though, we want the weekly option. George has asked, is there any way we can set it to every second Wednesday of the month? No, there's not, George, but you can set it to the 7th day of the month, and that would make sure that it's triggered by the second Wednesday. And if you leave a estimated completion date of 7 days, that will make sure it covers the second Wednesday of the month. Great. So that's set up a scheduling for the weekly kitchen clean, and you can see now we have a series of dates which it will be triggered, and this will trigger an email for us to say this scheduled maintenance is now due, and it will be required within 2 days of being completed, and that will then be a work order ready for the technicians group, which includes me as a user at the moment, to do that work order. So we click save and we return to the scheduled maintenance. We can now see that we have this perform the weekly clean of the kitchen as a scheduled maintenance, and importantly we can see here that it is got the play button, which means it's active and it's ready to go. Okay. So the next one I'd like to do is a meter-based maintenance, and it will be for every 10,000 kilometers service on a car, and I'll go through how we can do that and hopefully show you how it triggers as well. I have another question from Michael is, can you add more than one asset for a scheduled maintenance? The answer is yes, you can, Michael. You need to have the multi-asset work orders switched on for your CMMS. That's an option that comes in. I think it's at 3 users. It may be at 5 users. But I'll show you how that can be done in this next work order. So I'm going to create a new one, which is for my car. So we select the asset, my vehicle, like that. We started as open. We want it to be a maintenance type of preventative maintenance. Priority is high. Again, summary, standard 10,000 km service. Speak to mechanic shop to arrange a suitable time. And in this case, I'm not going to use the labor task tab. I'm just going to assign it to the technicians group. Again, estimated hours could be 2 hours, and that's all I'm going to do for this work order. It's a fairly simple one. I know the car, I know the technician. I can just go and do that. If I wanted to in here, I could add in some information for myself. So their telephone number is 647-111-111, for example, and that would help me complete this work order quite quickly when it gets created. And so that might be all I need to do for this scheduled maintenance for the time being. If I wanted to add another asset, the question was earlier, we can do that through here, into a multi-asset work order. In this case, I'm going to click on it, but we can see that this comes up and you can add in a new asset, so it becomes 2 assets. So it might be a whole series of fire extinguishers or something like that. If you're interested in that, there's a video on our website about multi-asset work orders and multi-asset scheduled maintenances. So returning to the vehicle, once every 10,000 kilometers, that's our aim. In this case, we want this to be done within 2 weeks of the maintenance being triggered. So we'll put a 14 days after work order is created in there. We want to now go to the scheduling tab. And so we want to generate this work order based on a meter reading trigger. And so we go to the meter reading trigger tab. And with this one, there's 2 options. There's one up here, which is a continuous meter reading. So that's like the kilometers. And the other option is like a measurement for something that stays relatively constant. So an example in this case could be the chlorine in a swimming pool would have a acidity measurement, and if it was too high, then we'd need to do something, and if it was too low, then we'd need to do something as well. So we could use that tab there when you expect to see a particular value, In this case, though, we're thinking about a car in which the kilometers increase all the time. And to do that, we go to this, we select the meter reading that it is. And so kilometers is there. I have a question coming through. And the question is, Bernie asked, so does that mean you have to create and schedule maintenance to read the odometer regularly? Yes, Bernie, if you are using a trigger based on a odometer meter reading, then you would need to enter that odometer meter reading in frequently in order to have a reasonable chance of setting it off at exactly the right time. In the near future, and Maintenance Assistant, we're currently talking about this often, is having a automatic way of communicating with machines in the internet. That's coming sometime, but at the moment you would need to create a scheduled maintenance to do that. I'll add that task in as well in a little bit. So in this case, we need it to be operate every 10,000 kilometers. So we want the vehicle to create a work order every 10,000 kilometers. Let's pretend we bought this vehicle when it was 25,000 kilometers old, and so we'd start it then at 25,000 kilometers. And so that would mean that at 25,000 kilometers we bought it new, and then in 10,000 kilometers after 25,000 kilometers, so 35,000 kilometers, that was when the first trigger would fire to say, make this work order, send off a work order based on this trigger. So here we go, we've set one starting at 25,000. The next one is 10,000 after that, which makes 35,000. So we would expect to see a work order at 35,000 kilometers on this My Vehicle asset. So we can click OK there, every 10,000 kilometers, starting at 25, so the first one is 35,000. In this case, we haven't set any end condition, so it doesn't stop at all. It just keeps going until the vehicle gets sent to the scrap heap. And remember again to set it from pause to active. And so we can press save, and we can schedule like that. And Bernie, your question, can we get a scheduled maintenance to include a meter reading task? Is yes, we can. Read the odometer, and in this task, it's a meter reading result, and the measurement is in kilometers. And so this would allow us then to have a task in the work order, which is to read the odometer. Okay, so let's return to our scheduled maintenance here, and we can see we've got this scheduled maintenance for the 10,000 kilometer service. If we look at our work orders, we've currently got no active ones. So let's try and trigger off that work order for the vehicle. So in this case, we go to My Vehicle and we go to the meter readings and events. And currently we have 0 kilometers on the clock, but we want to make this 25,000 kilometers. So here's our first one when we first get it. So now we've just got it, and then we would go and read it again, and perhaps it's now 32,000 kilometers. Oops, too big. Kilometers just there. And then we would expect, then we read it again, and it says 36,000 kilometers. And we click OK. And we can now see in our, I've just got sent an email which says, hi technicians, you were assigned work order number 349, and it's for the standard 10,000 kilometer service. And so if we click on work order 349, we can see if I log in, here's this work order which we've just created from the scheduled maintenance. So this is the work order, this is not the scheduled maintenance, and it tells me everything I need to do, and then I can go to the labor tasks and I can fill in the number of kilometers on the odometer, and that will insert into the into the odometer reading for my vehicle, and I can tick them off and say I've done them and change it to close completed. And I'll say I spent 2 hours doing this and 1 hour doing that. So we put in the result. It's now 39,000 kilometers. And now if we go back to our maintenance, we've got no active maintenances left, but if we go to our closed work orders, we can see we've closed that work order off. And if we go to our assets and we go to my vehicle and we go to the meter reading tab, we can see that this is now 39,000 kilometers like we just filled in at the meter reading for the work order. So hopefully that will make sense to you. We've just created a scheduled maintenance for the vehicle to be activated every 10,000 kilometers. So at 35, 45, 55,000 kilometers, and we've seen that a work order is generated. The next one I want to go through is an event-based maintenance. So this is something that we know that it's probably going to happen in the future. So in Toronto, we know it's going to snow, but we don't know when it is. So we can't really set a calendar-based maintenance for something like snow because it could occur on the 15th of January one year and it could occur on the 12th of January on another year. We just don't know when that might happen. So we create it as an event-based system. And we can't also do it on a meter reading because it's either snow or not. So if it does snow, then we need to clear it, and if it doesn't snow, we don't need to do it. So in this case, it is an event that we'll need to go and act upon when it happens. And the last thing I want to show you with this one is that we can create a scheduled maintenance based on a work order that we'd already created. We'll just use that as a template to create the scheduled maintenance for the future work orders. So let's return to my system here, and we go to the work orders, and we go to my, because I'm in a new browser, that doesn't exist there anymore. It's been updated since. If we go to my closed work orders, we can see here that I've already completed a work order that says the snow on the driveway needs to be cleared, and I've given it some instructions, and I've completed it, and I did it this morning or this afternoon. So using this, we want to create a scheduled maintenance because we know it's going to happen in the future. So we can just click up here on create scheduled maintenance, and it tells us that scheduled maintenance SM96 has been successfully created. If we click on that, we can see now we've been taken to a new scheduled maintenance, and it has all of the information that I had in the work order previously. So I've used the work order to create a scheduled maintenance, which I can then set a trigger on to create more work orders like that in the future. So in this case, I've already set it for my driveway. It's a safety type of maintenance. It's a high priority. I've given a summary of the issue, and I've given some work instructions, and I've assigned it to the technicians. The last thing we have to do is set up a schedule. So in this case, it's a event-based maintenance, which is the last of the three. So we've been through time scheduling, we've been through meter reading. This one's an event trigger, and so we use that. And we wish to have this scheduled maintenance, which is clear the snow from my driveway every time it snows on my driveway. So I'm going to set it using the event types snow clearing, and we can set these up as administrators in the MACMMS, and I'll go through that next as well, how we can create a new one. So use snow clearing as the event, and we click OK, and so there it is there, and we can press save, and we also need to fill out how fast we need to do it. So it needs to be done within 1 day because that's the rules here in Toronto, and we can click active. And so now we have created this scheduled maintenance based on a previous work order, and it still says we need to clear the snow from the driveway every time it snows. So we can be happily working away in our office on our dashboard of our MACMMS, and we look outside and see that it's snowing, and we think, right, well, I'm going to have to create a work order to clear off the snow on my driveway. And to do that, we go to the assets our assets, and we go to my driveway as an asset, and we think to ourselves, we need to create this work order based on it snowing, and so we need to go and add an event into here. We can do that clicking on new down here, most recent events, and we click the right event, which in this case is the snow is there and it needs to be cleared. Snowing on Thursday afternoon, and we click OK, and we can see now that this event has occurred, and we can press save, and once again we can see we've been sent an email which says, "Hi technicians, you've now been assigned this work order." It says the driveway in my house needs to be managed. So we can go to the CMMS from the email, or we can go to the work order from our CMMS, and we can see now in the active work orders we have this new work order, which is the driveway needs to be cleared of snow, and we can go in and complete that. So that's how we can use an event-based maintenance. Hopefully that example makes sense to you, and we can complete this work order like that. I've got another question coming through. From Tina. Sure, Tina, I'll just jump over that in a second. The question is, could you go over how the checkbox to create a work order on the start works? Yes, I can. Give me 2 seconds just to complete one other thing. I wish to show you how to create a new event option, and that we need to do as an administrator. So if I go to my alternative account and I log in as an administrator into this account, and I go to settings. In the CMMS settings tab, in the lookup tables, we can see there's asset event types, and so I can add a new asset event in here. Asset event, it's raining, is how we would use that. Use when raining, and we can click OK, and you can see now we have a snow clearing and it's raining as two events in our CMMS, and we could use either of them for different work orders. We could even create a scheduled maintenance for the driveway for when it's raining. Perhaps we need to go and sweep off the bark chips that fall onto the driveway when it rains. So hopefully that has explained all of that with scheduled maintenance. I'll just answer this question for Tina. So a question is, how do we use this checkbox just down here, create work order on start date? So if we were to use an alternative trigger, so perhaps this, instead of a weekly kitchen clean, it becomes a daily kitchen clean, for example. So what I'm going to do is just switch this to inactive to turn off the maintenance, and I'm going to change this from every Saturday to every day. So first I'm going to delete it to remove that from the system, and then I'll create a new one, which is create a time work order on a time schedule. I'm going to make this hourly so we can see that result come through. We want it to create on today. If we don't want it to create today, like we want it to start tomorrow, then we use this tick here. Otherwise, we don't use it there. And if we click OK there, we can see that that's happened. If we change it to active, take some time because it has to process how many times it needs to. It has to calculate all the times it needs to generate this work order for the next 13 months, and we can see now that it's created it for today and tomorrow and the day after. And so these times are in GMT, not in my local time. And you can see now that we have them starting on today. So hopefully that answers your question. And I hope you've all learned something about scheduled maintenance today. Just as a refresher, we went through a calendar-based maintenance. So in this case, we used a weekly-based maintenance. We went through a meter-based maintenance, so the 10,000 kilometer service on a car, and we went through an event-based maintenance. So that's how you can use scheduled maintenance to increase your efficiency on the CMMS, because you know, as an administrator, no longer have to create those work orders. They get created automatically and they get sent to the correct person, and you don't have to get involved except when you print out your reports and show them to your boss to say, look how great we're doing as a maintenance team. So thank you very much for your attendance. I do see a question here from George. If you wish to end now, thanks very much for coming. If you want to stay on the line, I'll answer the questions for George and Michael. Okay, George's question is there a way to use one event trigger to several SMs for several different assets, i.e. it snows, clear snow for each house on a separate work order? No, there's not, George. You need to go to it snows on each of the houses. So it is, you need to think of the event as it is snowing on my driveway, or it is snowing on the neighbour's driveway, or it is snowing on the third neighbour's driveway to be able to make that happen. The alternative is you could create a multi-asset work order, and if that is assigned to any one of those assets. So the 3 driveways I just mentioned, the 2 neighbours and yourself, and you go and create the it snows trigger for either of them. You'll create the one work order for all 3. Michael's also asked a question. Can you change the background color of the dashboard? No, you can't, Michael. I'm sorry. It's fixed. It's something that we're continuing to. It's fixed. The dashboard is undergoing some development at the moment to improve it, and it will hopefully show them a few more graphs, and hopefully will improve your experience as an administrator. If you wish to add that as a feature request, then please do so. And thank you all for coming. I've recorded this session, so if you wish to watch it in the future, I'll put it up again. Thank you. Bye.